She's an elite assassin with a perfect record, and today, her mission is to eliminate the newly elected president of the United States. But as soon as she locks in through her X8 scope, the president somehow senses he's being targeted. It's the glint of light from a distant mirror that gives her away. Yet the president stays perfectly calm, even calculating the 3,300-meter distance on the spot. All with sheer mathematical precision. A shot rings out, but he dodges effortlessly. In fact, he lets the bullet graze his shoulder on purpose. It was all part of his plan, because surviving an assassination attempt would only boost his popularity. And it's hard to believe that just a year ago, this man was a complete nobody. Back then, he was Eddie, a broke, struggling writer with big dreams. 3 months had gone by, and he hadn't written a single word. Even his longtime girlfriend left him, fed up with his failure. Spiraling into depression, Eddie spent his days drowning in booze. Until one day, he ran into his ex-brother-in-law. That unexpected meeting felt like a glimmer of hope in his dark, hopeless life. The guy looked sharp in a suit, wore an expensive watch, and spent money like water. Eddie was stunned to learn his ex-in-law was now working for a pharmaceutical company that had developed a mysterious clear pill. He introduced Eddie to the pill, something truly unusual. Humans only use 20% of their brain power, he explained, but this pill unlocks the other 80%. Eddie was skeptical. It sounded like some new age drug scam. Still, when he heard the pill cost $800 a pop, curiosity got the better of him. Reluctantly, he took it. With nothing left to lose, he figured, why not? His life was already a disaster. So Eddie swallowed the pill. He had no idea this moment would change everything. Back home, he was immediately confronted by his landlord, demanding overdue rent. But something inside him had shifted. Instead of panic, a strange wave of confidence washed over him. His pupils dilated. The world lit up with clarity and sharpness. He could hear every tiny sound, every rustle of cloth. He even saw individual strands of hair on his landlord's head. One glance at the book poking out of her purse and its entire content flashed into his mind. From those tiny details, he read her emotions like an open book. And then he started talking, calming her down. You don't like me, I get it. You think I'm a loser and want me gone. But what's really stressing you out is your graduation thesis, right? She was stunned. Eddie then guessed correctly that she was studying law, and that her worry was all about finishing that final paper. He pointed out that the book she was holding wasn't a reliable source. It had been ghostwritten by the author's assistant, no academic value. Then he offered her a better way to study, organized and effective. In just a minute, her anger melted into admiration. He not only got out of paying 3 months' rent, he even ended up working out with her. The experience left Eddie absolutely stunned. That tiny pill had made him smarter, maybe even smarter than Einstein. Ideas flooded his mind like a raging river, crystal clear and unstoppable. The novel he had struggled with for 3 months done in just 1 hour. The very next morning, Eddie took the finished manuscript straight to a publisher. But when Eddie handed in his manuscript, the publishing house's boss barely gave it a glance. She dismissed him outright, convinced he couldn't write anything worth publishing. But Eddie, fueled by newfound confidence, told her, just read the first 3 pages, and you'll beg to publish it. Sure enough, by that evening, she was blowing up his phone. Eddie, I've read over 40 pages already. Pick up the phone. I can't stop reading. I need more. The success came so fast, Eddie could hardly believe it. It felt like a legendary author had just been born overnight. But as he reached for his phone to reply, a chill ran down his spine. The pill's effect had worn off. It only lasted 24 hours. The thought of going back to normal was unbearable. Desperate, Eddie rushed back to his ex-brother-in-law's apartment. He opened the door to find the man bruised and bloodied. Turns out, Venom had expected him to come crawling back. Venom told him plainly the drug wasn't approved by any health authority. He had stolen it from the pharmaceutical company he worked for. If Eddie wanted more, he'd have to do Venom a favor, order him some takeout first. It was a petty demand, but Eddie complied. He needed that pill. But when he returned, the door was locked. Moments later, it creaked open again. Sensing something was wrong, Eddie forced his way in and was met with chaos. Venom was lying motionless on the floor, soaked in blood. Eddie dialed 911 in a panic, but as he waited for help, his mind went back to why he'd come. He noticed pill bottles scattered across the floor, and instantly realized Venom had been killed over the drug. Eddie threw on gloves and began searching the apartment. Eventually, he found a stash of cash hidden inside a toaster oven. Underneath it, a full bag of pills untouched, enough to keep him powered up for an entire year. At the police station, he kept his mouth shut about the drug. On the way home, he took another pill and instantly, his brain kicked back into overdrive. In seconds, he had mapped out a new plan for his life. First stop, a high-end barber shop for a rich man's haircut. Then he finished his novel in just 4 days, learned to play the piano fluently in 3, with a few foreign phrases. He even charmed a woman at a bar who didn't speak his language. He took his talents to the casino and won big through pure calculation. Eddie had become a master of everything. Even among the upper class, he spoke with ease and confidence. But this wasn't the endgame. Eddie had his sights set on something much bigger, becoming the president of the United States. And a presidential campaign required serious money. The fastest way to make that kind of cash? The stock market. Eddie borrowed $100,000 from a loan shark, no questions asked. Then applied for a job at a major brokerage firm. On the pills, he crunched market data like a machine. And in just 1 week, he turned that 100 grand into millions. Word of his talent spread, and the financial world took notice. He got offers from 4 major financial conglomerates. Even Carl Van Loon, the kingpin of Wall Street, was intrigued. Even his ex-girlfriend, the one who left him at rock bottom, started trying to win him back. And soon, Eddie got the meeting of a lifetime with financial giant Carl Van Loon. Eddie confidently laid out his unique market insights and personal trading strategies. Carl, for the first time, felt outmatched. Eddie's brilliance left him completely impressed. Carl had a major corporate problem and he needed someone with Eddie's brain to solve it. But before Carl could explain, Eddie had already figured it out from the data alone. Carl was secretly trying to take over an entire energy project, but a rival company named Banglong was standing in his way. If Eddie could help him acquire it, Carl promised riches beyond imagination. But what Carl didn't know, Eddie had plans of his own. He wasn't just helping Carl, he was using him. Eddie wanted Wall Street's full support behind him, because his ultimate goal was the presidency. Just as everything seemed within reach, the side effects of the pill kicked in. Eddie suddenly realized he'd walked through dozens of blocks without noticing. His memory was breaking apart. One moment he was at a bar, the next he was at an art gallery. He wasn't just losing memories, he was losing control of his own body. If this continued, he'd become a zombie, completely overtaken by the drug. The next morning, Eddie woke up and decided he had to quit the pill. But the moment he opened a document for work, his mind went blank. What used to be simple now looked like incomprehensible code. And he had to start his new job that very day. Left with no choice, Eddie turned to Carl for help. But when Carl asked a basic question, Eddie couldn't answer. His focus drifted to a TV airing breaking news. A model had just died. She was the girl Eddie had spent the night with. Eddie rushed to the bathroom and vomited. Did he kill her? He wasn't even sure anymore. To find answers, Eddie pulled out Venon's notebook, the one with all the contacts. He started calling each person on the list, but the responses chilled him to the bone. Everyone on the list was either dead or in a vegetative state. It was clear Eddie might be next. Just as he hung up his last call, his phone rang again behind him. It was the assassin he'd been tracked down. There was no doubt now the secret of the pill was out. Thinking fast, Eddie jumped into a cab and got away. Later, he ran into his ex-wife at a restaurant. Her disfigured face made Eddie recoil in horror. She had been the first person to try the drug, and when she sensed something was wrong, she stopped taking it too late to avoid the damage. Eddie was shaken to his core, but he had come too far. He couldn't walk away now. Just as he reached for another pill, he ran into the loan shark again. Despite his millionaire status, Eddie had never repaid that debt. Hundreds of thousands in interest still unpaid. And for that, he got beaten to a pulp. Just then, the thug noticed a pill Eddie had dropped on the floor. Without hesitation, he picked it up and swallowed it. After that, he took his payment and swaggered off like he owned the world. Eddie, now without his pills and barely conscious, was collapsing. He used the last of his strength to drag himself to his girlfriend's office. There, he begged her to retrieve the pills for him. At first, Linda looked shocked and deeply worried, but seeing Eddie so broken, she couldn't bring herself to say no. She eventually agreed and set off to find the hidden stash. Linda located the pills, but on her way back, she noticed someone tailing her. It was the same assassin who had once chased Eddie. Linda quickly ditched her car and ran into a nearby park. The assassin followed right behind, relentless. Linda, using her charm, got 2 men to help her, but even they stood no chance against the killer's brutality. Within seconds, the 2 were dead on the spot. Terrified, Linda turned and ran for her life. She immediately called Eddie for help. Eddie told her to take one of the pills now. With no other choice, Linda swallowed the pill. Almost instantly, she felt the rush of power. Only then did she truly understand why Eddie was obsessed with it. Eddie had just escaped one disaster, but another was right around the corner. The thug who'd taken the pill earlier was now addicted to its power. He tracked Eddie down, demanding the rest of the stash. To avoid more trouble, Eddie reluctantly gave him a few pills to get rid of him. But Eddie knew his supply was running low. He hired 2 bodyguards and moved into a presidential suite for safety. Only when he was truly secure could he focus on his ambitions again. Over time, Eddie helped his boss win major energy contracts, bringing massive profits to the company. To secure a steady supply of pills, Eddie bought out a lab. He wanted to replicate and improve the formula for long-term use. He even helped the lab crush all its competitors. Eventually, Eddie became a global powerhouse in the energy industry. Even Carl, his former boss, realized this genius could no longer be controlled. Sooner or later, Eddie would become his greatest rival. Carl was no fool, he saw it coming. Because Eddie's ambition had grown bigger than anyone imagined, he wanted the presidency. But just then, Eddie got entangled in a murder case. To clear his name, he hired the most ruthless lawyer alive. True to his reputation, the lawyer swept away all accusations with ease. Once he was free, Eddie rushed to the company to finalize a major deal. But the chairman of Banglong, the key partner, never showed up. As the chairman left the building, Eddie noticed something strange. His driver. It was the assassin, the same one who'd been after him all along. Suddenly, it all made sense. The assassin was working for Banglong, trying to steal his supply. Eddie had the upper hand, he had what they desperately needed. But before he could enjoy the advantage, a gang stormed his suite. Not even an 8-meter thick steel door could stop their industrial cutter. They wanted the pill's origin. The thug boasted he had found a new method, injecting the pill directly into his bloodstream to prolong its effects. But before he could finish gloating, he was suddenly stabbed through the chest. Moments later, he collapsed to the floor dead. To fight off the remaining thugs, Eddie did the unthinkable. He sucked the blood from the corpse to absorb the drug. Fueled by the pill, the last 2 thugs didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, they too were down motionless. At the same time, the hospital announced the death of Chairman Bella. As for the assassin, Eddie persuaded him with a few calm words. With his employer dead, the killer had no reason to continue the job. 2 years later, Eddie had become a U.S. senator. He was just 1 step away from the White House. But just when Eddie was confident about his future, Carl showed up uninvited. And he wasn't there to offer congratulations. He had come with a bombshell revelation. Carl had secretly acquired the pharmaceutical company that made the pills. And he had shut down Eddie's personal lab without warning. Now, Carl claimed he was the only one who could supply Eddie. His condition? Eddie had to work for him again. It was a bold and arrogant move. But Carl had underestimated his opponent. Eddie smiled coldly and revealed a shocking truth. He had already improved the formula long ago. It now had no side effects. Even better, it worked permanently. Carl was stunned into silence. Eddie then casually predicted that a truck driver outside was texting while going 80 miles per hour. And that in a few seconds, he'd crash into a taxi up ahead. Facing someone with this kind of mental superpower, Carl had nothing left to say. He left, humiliated. From that day on, nothing in the world could stop Eddie anymore. He walked through life as an unstoppable force. And with that, the incredible story of Limitless comes to an end. But here's the question: if you had access to a pill that unlocked 100% of your brain, would you take it? If you would, comment 1 below. If not, choose 2. Thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. See you next time.